Jeff, and thank you to the group for inviting me back. How many of you, let me see a show of hands, who was here last time I was here? Quite a few. And who was not? Okay. Now, when I was here last time, I spoke about my very, very first encounter with the Spirit. And it was a shock for me to be encountered with the spirit of an ancient Chinese sage who spoke to me through a young man who'd gone into a hypnotic trance. Now, I'm not going to repeat that because those of you who were here before will remember that, and those of you who were not here, you may be able to see it because Louis very kindly recorded it. It's on YouTube, so it's there for everyone to see. Yeah. What I'd like to do this evening is to relate to you an encounter with a dark spirit. Now, the spirit that came through to me before, it was a spirit guide, a good spirit, if you like. And this was at a time when I was just beginning on my journey of discovery about the spirit world. And I was following three avenues of inquiry. One was mainstream psychology. I'd enrolled to do a degree in psychology. Another avenue was to learn about hypnosis, altered states of consciousness, because it was a significant factor. And the third avenue was to go to a spiritualist church and see how they did things and what they got up to. And it was while I was at the spiritualist church, I was invited to join a development circle. And those of you who are spiritualists will know what I mean by a development circle. Sorry, Graham, no. I start to laugh when I recall these incidents because at the time they were not funny. Now they are. So there was this spiritualist circle. There were 7 of us, and everyone said their prayers, said the Lord's Prayer, and asked for protection, and went into the meditative state in order to prepare to connect with Spirit. And there was a young man in the group who had recently discovered the gift of automatic writing. And he would go into a trance and he would have no idea what was going on. He was completely out of it. He'd have a pad and a pen, and Spirit would take possession of his hand and write. And to demonstrate that it was Spirit, first of all, it would draw a perfect circle. And I defy anybody sitting here to draw a perfect circle. The Spirit can do that. So in this spiritualist development circle, everyone had got into trance. The young man was there in trance. He had a pen and his pen on his lap. And then everyone in the group began to exhibit signs of distress. They were showing signs of disgust on their faces and abhorrence. They wanted to get away. Something was affecting them that was not nice at all. And this was affecting every single person in the group, collectively. They all experienced the same thing. Bad taste in the mouth. All their senses were being bombarded with something that was evil. And I was the only one that was not affected. Because I was the only one that was not in trance. And I stood behind the young man who had the pen in his hand, and I saw what he was... Sorry, I can't help laughing at it. I saw what he was writing. And he wrote, ha ha ha, Terry doesn't know, Terry doesn't have the power. What he was writing was absolutely true. I didn't know. I didn't have the power. I was completely in the dark. And I was helpless. And there was this group of 6 people experiencing these terrible sensations, and there was nothing I could do about it. Feeling of complete helplessness. but eventually they did recover from their trance, and they were horrified at the experience, and that circle never met again. It was broken up just like that. But I was the only one that wasn't affected, and I was curious, and I was angry. I wanted to know what was going on here. So I asked, next time I went into the spiritualist church, I asked the question, why did this happen? And I got the answer, so you could learn. And that was the answer, for your learning. And my God, I learned. That was the beginning of my experience with dark spirit. And what I want to do this evening is to show you a model of vulnerability. In that particular set of circumstances, I was the only one not affected, but everyone else was. Why was that? And it's taken me a long time to find out. And I'd like to explain to you what I found out. Now, this is a presentation that I gave in York in December last year. Now, I'm not going to go through the whole presentation. If anyone's interested in the whole lecture, again, I've recorded it, and it's on YouTube if you want to listen to it. It's not visual, it's just audio. So I'm going to skip through this very, very quickly, and I'm going to go to the important part, which is the model that I want to introduce to you. If I can find my cursor. I'm going to skip through this very quickly, as quick as I can. This is all academic stuff that I'm not going to bore you with. Because this whole presentation takes 45 minutes and we haven't got time for that. This is what I want to show you. This is my vulnerability model. Now, the situation that I just described to you with the spiritual development circle, where everyone was affected and I wasn't, this is me here at the sharp end. Because what we have here is what I call the dissociation continuum. At the extreme left, Brian very kindly gave me a tool that I've got in my pocket. There are people who find it difficult to enter into an altered state of consciousness. People who find it difficult to be hypnotized. People who find it difficult to meditate. People whose conscious awareness is focused purely on the here and now. They're logical, deductive, analytical. These are your scientists and your mathematicians. Okay? At the other end of the continuum, you have people who find it very easy to go into an altered state. People who find it very easy to meditate and to communicate with spirit realms. So that is the continuum, dissociation and hypnotizability. To dissociate is to allow your mind to be removed from the immediate surroundings. If you're daydreaming or deeply engrossed in a book or film, you are dissociated to a degree. If you're driving along the motorway and you're thinking about your destination or what you're going to be doing in the evening, you're not concentrating on where you're going, you might miss your turning, you are dissociated. So what could be perhaps described as highway hypnosis. So who's driving the car? Automatic pilot's driving the car. So this demonstrates quite simply that you have two minds. At least two minds, that's the minimum that you have. The conscious and the unconscious, or the conscious and the subconscious. So that centre line is the continuum, and every one of us exists somewhere on that continuum. Are you one of those people that finds it very, very difficult to meditate? Or are you one of those people that can meditate and go into a trance at the drop of the hat? We all exist somewhere on that continuum. Now, an awful lot of research has been done by mainstream psychology to show how people react and respond to different circumstances across a population. And an instrument that is used to demonstrate this is what's known as the bell curve, or the normal distribution curve. And I'm going to go into that in just a moment. But what I'd like to talk about now are the positive and negative experiences and the relationship with our sense of self. I'm going to use the word ego, not in a detrimental sense, but in the sense that Freud introduced it, the ego, the sense of self, the I. People who have a very, very strong sense of self, a robust sense of self, can perhaps, again, exist on the sharp end of the wedge. People who have a very fragmented sense of self will exist on the opposite end. People who fall apart easily. You've heard the term, he was beside himself. When you fall apart at the seams, you have you find it difficult, people who find it difficult to respond to stressful situations, people who are emotional, neurotic, and so on. So as we move along the continuum, considering ego strength or ego fragmentation, you'll get diagnoses of mental illness, starting at the extreme end here. The first step along the continuum is perhaps anxiety, subtle anxiety. Moving further along, panic attacks. Moving further along still, dissociation, post-traumatic stress, where the stressful situation is too traumatic to deal with, so what does the person do? They dissociate. So as we move further along the continuum, we have the ability to dissociate and the inability to deal with stressful situations, so you fall apart more. It's illogical, isn't it, really? It's common sense when you think about it. So people who have logical minds, people who don't fall apart, people who have a strong sense of self, scientists at this end, they find it extremely difficult to appreciate the experience of people at the other end. Going back to what Brian was saying earlier, and what Michael touched on, the experience. How do you explain the experience? And Graham mentioned it as well, but you asked Michael, how do you explain that experience to other people? Well, if you can't, then this is why the scientists at this end can't understand it, because they don't experience it themselves. So the personal experience is important in order to be able for us, or the individual, to appreciate the experience of others. If you've never been there yourself, how can you possibly understand what it's like? So our scientists are trapped at the sharp end. Until they have the experience themselves, they're never really going to understand. So we can take the wedge And we can say that the sharp end of the wedge is that on the left side of the bell-shaped curve. The thick end of the wedge is the right side, and in the middle you've got Mr. and Mrs. Average. We all have spiritual, mystical, religious experiences of one kind or another, and we've heard this evening about some of those experiences in terms of life after death and deceased being in contact with us. So we all exist somewhere on that curve. Some of us are more susceptible to these experiences than others. But this is a scientific tool. This is used in mainstream research. So why do we consider some experiences supernatural or paranormal when they all exist on the same continuum? It's a bit like the light frequency, the light spectrum. We can only see light according to a specific range of frequency. But it moves into the ultraviolet range, we can't see it. When it moves into infrared range, we can't see it. But it's still there, it still exists. The spiritual and mystical experiences are the same. They are named supernatural or paranormal by those scientists who don't have such experiences. But those of us who do have those experiences go, well, it's quite normal, really. And the more you're able to recognise its normality, then the more you're going to experience them. I want to go back now to the wedge. Where's my cursor? I always have trouble finding the cursor on these things. Okay, positive and negative. We talked about fragmented ego and the ability to dissociate. Now, the person who has the ability to dissociate and go into a trance-like state, who has a strong sense of self, a robust ego, would have positive mystical experience. These are your shaman, your healers, your clairvoyants, your mediums. And because they have a robust sense of self, they are more able to deal with negative emotions. You don't hear of a trance medium communicating with the spirit if they're afraid of spirit. They don't have that fear. They know how to deal with the negative experience if it comes along. You can't be a medium if you're afraid. You can't be a shaman if you're fearful. But if you go easily into a trance state and you have a fragmented ego, what happens to you? You're falling apart and you're losing your contact with reality. What is happening to you? The psychiatrist will diagnose you with mental illness. And it's those people who go down the negative branch of the model who are diagnosed with hearing voices, having hallucinations. But are they actually having hallucinations? If the medium and the shaman is communicating with spirit, what are people down here doing? Are they immune from spirit influence? Of course not. They are the vulnerable ones. This is the vulnerability model. People who don't know how to deal with negative emotions like fear and anger fall apart at the drop of a hat. Hear voices, want to do for the rest of this evening, and I don't want to take up any more time in exploring this model, I want to show you the consequences of vulnerability without protection. It's only a short clip. This is a real person. And then afterwards, I want to show you, if I can find my cursor, how it's dealt with. This might shock you. A warning.
Can you see me? Can you see me? Okay. Okay. Now I've seen you. I understand what's happening. I'll do something, okay? Alright? I'll let you go now. Good man. Don't worry, good man. We'll get this fixed for you. No problem. Alright? Speak to you soon.
He was unable to speak, but he was able to write. Not well. He was in Canada, actually. He contacted me by Skype and asked for help. And he couldn't explain what was wrong with him, so we made the Skype connection, and you can see for yourself. So now the question is, how do we deal with it? How do we deal with it? Let me show you how we deal with it. This is a man that I work with in Wiltshire. His name is Andrew.
Okay, so I'm now connected to the subject that we're discussing. So I'm just asking Chen to perform a quick scan and review, which he'll do with a team. So he works with a team of other managers that work with him. I obviously only converse with him, and then he basically subjugates playing through like a hierarchical tree, if you like, to the other managers that he works with. And he'll then come back and discuss with me. So he's just providing me with a picture now. So obviously a picture in mind of a person that has what looks to be, again, so this is pictorially, but I decipher that into what I think will actually be happening. So I see a picture of a person that's got what I see to be barbed wire wrapped around them from their feet, all the way around their body, right up to their sort of top of the head. And they've got a mask over their face. They can't see out of their eyes, and they've got something in their mouth to stop them talking. They've also got lots of connections into the back of the head, which again I see these as dark, almost like cables, like electric cables that have been connected in to the back of this person's head. So Chen's now, so again, this is very common, again, this picture I see is there's no grounding at all, so this person, negative entities tend to put something in place to stop the person being grounded. So I see like a big, almost like a paving slab that's been, if you like, connected under this person's feet, so they don't have the ability to be able to connect themselves to the planet. And all of these things I can then dictate as to what I actually think the person experienced from the pictures that I see. So Chen's now basically doing what I consider to be like a body split. So I see the person in front of me as a human being figure, and then we basically cut them in half, and we break each half apart, so I can look through and actually see inside. And what I person will say things to those around them, to loved ones, and what they think they're saying will be changed and it will come out completely differently. So they may think that they're saying, you know, I'm feeling great, I'm having a good day, but what they're actually saying will be something completely negative, and there'll be lots of aggression, lots of disagreements with people around them, loved ones, and the people they're living with. And again, this is quite common. So negative entities and energies that are manipulating this person's state by changing what they hear and changing what they say. And this, I think, is what makes it very difficult for people in this situation, is that in their own mind, they know what they think they're saying to the people around them, but the reaction of those people will be quite at odds with what they think they say, because of course it's almost like an intermediary has actually changed the conversation, and what they hear won't be the same either. So they'll find that they'll get into lots of fights and lots of disharmony at home on those sort of home front.
Is there any way of telling what caused this in the first place? What the attractant was?
So one of the things that tends to be common is obviously drugs. So I'm not saying this particular person has done drugs, but drugs are one of the major causes of most of the people I tend to see at some point in life. They've taken some type of drug, and depending, again, it's rather like, well, I sort of like it to peanuts, oddly, that, you know, someone can eat a bag of peanuts and they're fine, another person can take a sip of, you know, or a tiny amount of peanut oil, and they go into some sort of anaphylactic shock and, you know, almost die. So it seems to be the same with people, really. Some people can take drugs all day long, recreational drugs on weekend, which opens up the etheric body, and they have no problems. Another person can you know, smoke weed or take cocaine or something just once, and when they're taking it, or maybe it's the place that they take it and the people they're around, but these entities then, once the etheric field's been opened, they connect in, and then these people can't shake them off and they become a problem.
Okay, so for someone who doesn't take drugs or doesn't drink, is there some way that entities like this can be attached to someone through a curse?
Yes, a curse is obviously another thing really. So if you get involved with people or religions or different types of social structures, you know, there are many people that walk in the planet that are aware of the spiritual world, and you know, the spiritual world is a, you know, a bifold world, really. It's positive and negative. So you can work with positive or negative entities.
So what you're explaining to me are the possibilities of how this person
Yes.
can be affected. But I'm wondering if Chen can tell us what actually caused it. Is there any possibility?
Yeah, I can ask them actually. Okay, so one of the key problems really, of course, is the immune system. So when the immune system is compromised, then the etheric body is compromised by default really. So he's saying that this is what's happened in this particular case, that the immune system has been massively compromised, and obviously as the immune system starts to be compromised, you lose your visible health, and therefore your etheric field is compromised as well.
Okay,
So he's suggesting that this person has basically been in a hospital environment, and hospitals tend to be one of the worst places really, because there's obviously a lot of people that are ill, there's lots of disease, and they kind of, it's almost like, to me anyway, a hospital is almost like a pub to an alcoholic. It's not the best place that they can go, because you've got a collection of ill people that have got compromised immune systems.
well, that's another subject of debate that we can continue with perhaps at a later date. But for this person right now, what does Chen suggest is the remedy?
So the remedy is basically to go through a complete clearing, etheric clearing. So we detach the negative entities that are connected, that are manipulating the person's thought process and speech, and we basically put grounding back in place, so that again connected back into the Earth's energy and the grounding of the planet from a physical perspective, and we just clear the etheric field and remove all of the negative contamination.
Okay, so you can ask for that to be started.
Yes, yeah.
And how long would it take, do you suppose, for the person to feel the effect of that?
So it's normally within 24 hours really. The etheric field, where I find most people, some people feel the effect instantly, other people it takes them a while for the etheric field to change the vibration of the physical. But I mean, we can, so again, if I explain the way that I do that, we So I see that as just big black blocks of energy, almost like clouds with light. And I found that the best way that I can remove them quickly, because I used to work on each thing individually, but I could spend hours. So I now just basically visualise a big golden flame, and I send it from my hands into the outer etheric field and see it just burn off everything that's negative. So again, everything is kind of done with intention. So my intention is just to remove everything negative from this person's etheric field.
Like using a spiritual blowtorch.
Yeah, just a very powerful blowtorch. So rather than go through everything individually and I just miss things and have to come back a day later, and so now I just visualise almost like a nuclear explosion that just basically disseminates everything that's in that field that's negative. And that then normally leaves me with the actual entities that are left, because at this point I haven't really dealt with them. So this is where I can kind of get into a conversation with them if I choose, or I can just ask my guide and his team to go off and detach and remove. So again, most of the negative entities I come across that have been with people for a long time, it's almost like when they first connect, they connect just one link, if you like, one cable, and the longer they're with the person, the more cables they connect. They connect into, the backs of the eyes, the throat, the ears, the nose. So they start to control everything. And when it gets to the point that I just see a mass of wires and connections and links, I tend to know that that's going to take, my guidance team quite a while to disconnect.
What you're describing to me will offer opportunities for lots of people to ask a wide variety of questions. So I don't want to go into that now, but perhaps people with an interest in asking questions can contact us, and we can address them in time. So just to finish off what we're doing, this is a live scan of a real person who's in trouble and wants relief. So what needs to be done in order to round off this particular person?
Okay, so my guidance team have started to remove the external attachments, if you like. So to remove the actual entity, I engage in conversation with them, which I tend not to do now because time is always precious. And I found that there's no real value in talking to them, because you talk to something negative to start with, they never tell you the truth, and they'll try and do deals with you that you can end up tying yourself up with. So I just basically visualise. So this is where I visualise a sword. So I'll change the pictures and make things more interesting for myself, really. So I just visualise a big sword that I have, that I take out of the sheath, and I just run it around the etheric body of the person. So around them in a kind of cylinder effect, and then up over the top of their feet and their head. So with this sort of my intention is I disconnect to cut every single cord that's connected to these entities. At this point, these cords are still connected to the entities. So I then visualise a hand that takes hold of all of these cords, and I pull them towards me, so all of the entities come forward and I can see different faces. And this is where they normally try to create some type of fear, really. So they show themselves as, a horned devil or anything you might be scared of is what you'll see. So it's the worst pictures that you can bring up in your mind, and the worst film you've ever seen is the pictures that you'll see.
Like the boggart in the Harry Potter film.
Yeah. And that always happens. They always try to, because of course they realise at this point I've actually connected to them, and I'm actually holding them at my disposable as opposed to the other way around. Really.
Okay.
So at this point, I normally then pass this to Chen, so I give him these connections, and all I then see is him, if you like, pull normally to the right, and all of these entities will disappear in a flash.
Would this have a parallel with those practitioners who perhaps call upon help from Archangel Michael?
Yeah, so I've used Archangel Michael in the past, and I've helped to do things. So sometimes I've had problems, and Chen suggested that we could do with other types of help, and I put a thought out that I'd like to connect. But again, it's very precision connection. I'm commanding to connect to an archangel that I perceive to be good, and is going to be working with my guides. So again, for me, the connection is my guides will deal with the archangel, and I still deal just with my guide.
So what I hear you saying is that there's no set ritual that will deal with all this. You have to be flexible
Yeah.
and dynamic in
So another thing I used to do was to change, when I look at that person that I'm clearing, I would actually change the view to look in ultraviolet and then infrared, because I'm actually seeing them in what I consider to be my normal spectrum. And then I realised that if I turned the picture to be an ultraviolet view, I would see entities that are living in that frequency of the spectrum that I hadn't seen. And then I would change over to infrared, which is the other end of the spectrum, and I would see other things that weren't visible in my ultraviolet view.
So you've raised a very, very interesting point there, that we can see things on a spectrum of energy vibration, and that can be visualised.
Yeah, that's again, so that was one of the things that I learned not to do really, was not to kind of be too bespoke and too process orientated. It was more a case of trying these different types of techniques, and each technique would then give me a different view on things, and sometimes I would look at somebody and see nothing, and I'd switch to an infrared view and see absolutely teeming with negativity.
Interesting point. Okay, let me stop you there and ask if there's, before we finish this particular section, this lesson, if you like, is there anything else that needs to be done before the lesson?
No, so from all I then do basically, so we've cleared the etheric field, I then obviously put a person back into some form of protection. So I question their sovereignty to see if this client is sovereign, yes or no, is the client sovereign, yes or no, is the client sovereign, yes or no. I won't finish until I get 3 yeses.
Okay.
So if I get a no at some point, I think, okay, there's something hiding that I've missed. And this is where I learned not to be too process bound, because the same process won't work every time. And then I'll get a no back and I think, oh, but I've done what I would normally do, which would normally clear somebody. And then I have to go and have a look at it in a different way and find whatever answers is still connected to their etheric field.
Okay. So I'll stop the camera rolling now. If you'd like to carry on with that process, uninterrupted, and then...
So I've kind of finished actually.
Yeah.
My perspective, yeah, so I've put the back in there sort of protected bubble.
Okay, so
And I've questioned their sovereignty, which is as I would expect it to be. So it's just for my guys to finish their work really.
Okay, so the next step is just to contact the client
Contact them, yeah.
and ask how they're feeling.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, Andy, thank you very much.
That's okay, my pleasure.
Well, what do you think of that then? I'm going to give you a chance to digest what you've just seen and invite questions.